Last fall, Ontario high school students were all set to take their required literacy test, their EQAO, online, except it was hacked, and so they had to use pen and paper. That's perhaps less significant than the Russian hacking that dominated the U.S. election, but still serious enough. Now, Ontario has appointed its first ever provincial security advisor. He is Ray Boisvert, one-time head of counterterrorism and intelligence at CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. And Ray Boisvert joins us now with more. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Steve.
Can you just tell us, this is obviously a new job, you're the first guy in this new job. What is your job?
Well, the role is essentially to sort of examine the way we consider threats, try to get ahead of the curve in some respects. At the end of the day, one of the most important things to be resilient against the full spectrum of threats around a society, around critical infrastructure, around the population, so whether it's terrorism to cybersecurity, is situational awareness. And that requires some intelligence work. So essentially, we're going to look at the things that matter to Ontario, matters to its citizens, things that support, sustain the economy, many things that we take for granted every day, from hydro to water to sewage, sanitation, the roads, the infrastructure. All these things matter to the economy and our way of life.
So that's a very broad mandate. We're going to focus, I think, a little bit on the cybersecurity end of things here. And to that end, Sheldon, if you would, let's bring these facts up. Canada has more computers per capita than any country in the world, 129 devices per 100 people. We are apparently the heaviest internet users in the world, spending more than 40 hours online per person per month. Let's keep going here. The global cost of cyber attacks is expected to grow to $2.1 trillion in a couple of years. 70% of Canadian businesses have been victims of cyber attacks. That's an average cost of $15,000 per incident. The global market for cybersecurity products and services is expected to grow to more than $170 billion by the year 2020. And how have we responded so far? The last federal budget promised $77 million over 5 years to tackle cybersecurity. Well, let's get into some examples here. Hydro One. A Hydro One IP address was likely compromised by the same Russian hackers that recently got into the Democratic National Committee memory banks and kind of ruined that election for Hillary Clinton. I want to know how concerning that ought to be to us.
Well, it should be, because it is also part of a larger problem, and in fact, a very, very deep problem. So the IP address that was apparently or reportedly compromised in itself was not important. It was a disused item that was probably one of thousands, if not tens of thousands, around the globe that hostile intelligence services use to either as a jumping off point for an attack or perhaps a data dump site later on. The larger issue, however, is that people have to start recognizing the pervasiveness of cyber threats from nation states, from organized criminal groups, to young persons who, and older persons and others who are simply working as lone actors in isolation, perhaps have with malicious intent or out of pure curiosity and just enjoy the challenge of entering into a network or a system. And then you add on to all of that, we're at the cusp of the internet of not just things, but of everything. So it's that perhaps 50 billion devices, the things that connect our fridge, our stoves, our cars. Our car will be the single most important mobile communication device that we will be in possession of. It'll be completely infused with data. So as a result, everything that has an IP address, everything has a beaking out point, becomes a potential vector or a threat target. And in the hands of hostile entities that are very well versed, especially nation states, some parts of the world, especially in places like Russia, there's collusion between the security apparatus and criminal organized groups. So therefore, the latter people, the criminal groups, get access to some of the best technology. And then you look at the dark web, and you look at the black market in cyber weapons. And any individual can pretty well buy any number of type of weaponized malware to either target a former spouse, a former employer, perhaps a large state entity, a bank, financial sector.
This is endless.
Name it. It is. It's a whole new world. It is the Matrix on steroids, a sort of pop culture thing. Yet it's so insidious, we don't think about it. And yet we think about terrorism over the top. And I think that's a misplaced priority to a great degree.
Does that mean you're Keanu Reeves in this whole drama?
Unfortunately not. And we wish I had the access and the resources and the likability. The big part is, though, terrorism works because it terrorizes. And it affects societies. Every family that watched or any parent that watched the Boston Marathon event, or any young person who witnessed the Bataclan on the news in Paris, the big attack from about almost 2 years ago now, you realize that these things have a long, pervasive effect on people's psyche. So they think about the risk of terror. This, however, is just below the surface, yet it has a much bigger impact on our society, the way we live, potentially in a world of fifth dimensional warfare, which we can talk about, but also around our future prosperity. And that's where we need to address it.
Well, this isn't terrorism, the example I'm going to give you here, but it was still, annoying for a lot of parents and for students. The EQAO test that got hacked, and as a result, they had to throw it all out, and the kids had to do it all over again. Is that your responsibility now to ensure that these tests going forward do not get hacked?
Well, there's no perfect solution to cybersecurity, and there's no specific one entity or one area of government or one area of our society that's responsible for securing the internet. It's a series of things that will have to occur over time. Starting off with, as I said earlier, situational awareness. Understanding what's at issue and what threatens our society.
But do they bring you in now? I mean, the EQAO having been hacked, does the Ministry of Education then bring you in and say, okay, we have this problem, go solve it?
Well, I'm now one of the many resources they can call upon, absolutely. And hopefully as we build our team and we start creating the sort of insights that we're looking to develop, and that is around intelligence-driven decision-making, we'll be able to better inform various senior government decision makers, deputy ministers, their staff, ministers and others around what sort of things that need to get done to make our society much more resilient to cyber threats.
You say you got a team. How many on the team?
Well, we're looking building out initially around 9 people, and then we'll see where it goes from there. We have the ability to scale up as required. Right now, it's a bit of a proof of concept because this is the first province to do it to the level we're doing it. Only one other province, New Brunswick, has actually had a long-term effort around this area. But we're going in big, and we're doing it in a way that will be much more, I think, impactful than any other province.
You mentioned New Brunswick. University of New Brunswick was onto this recently. What did they do?
Well, they do a number of things, I think, really well, and I think kudos to them. They were early on to see that at the end of the day, all threats are local. So the federal government has primacy over national security, national defense, and things that really sort of are the highest level of undertaking around securing our society. But down deep, when you look at what happens day in, day out, whether it's a case of radicalization of youth, of persons, as we had Aaron Driver and probably no longer about 6 months ago, ends up dying in a situation, in a confrontation, which he himself was looking towards. It seems quite evident,
this was
having
the guy
ID.
From Strathroy, Ontario?
That's correct. So he had built himself a homemade explosive device, was going to head off into some public event or place and kill himself and probably seriously harm others. That's a serious problem of radicalization. That is best dealt with locally. The same with cybersecurity and a number of other things. Citizens themselves in Ontario have a big role to play in securing their own home network and practicing, well, the best practices available around what your children do, what you do with your own financial information. Stats really kind of drive me crazy sometimes, but there was a little thing not that long ago where about 30% of people in the United States will use a public Wi-Fi to file their tax returns. So it's these sort of poor hygiene things that have a very negative impact on the individual. And don't forget, individuals quite often have a seamless approach to their work, their play, and their personal lives around their devices. What happens on their personal devices at home can quickly migrate into the business network.
I infer from your telling us this story that you think it is a dumb idea to file your taxes on public Wi-Fi.
Good call. Yes, absolutely. And I think even the way we use our mobile devices is another important part of this. Because the attackers out there look for weak links. So people, for example, would use their domain name from their company or from, let's say, like myself, Ray Boisvert @ and then I could use that to sign up for magazines, for clubs and subscriptions. Those are often stolen. Once they're hacked, they end up in the dark web, and then others will acquire those and then target the institution you work for.
There was a recently leaked federally commissioned report that said that the Canadian government, quote, is simply not up to the overall challenge of guarding against cyber threats on their own. Are we really that far behind the rest of the world on this?
Well, we are not doing as well as I think we should be doing. I think there is hope. The federal government, Minister Goodale, The public safety minister has had a major consultation with the public during the fall. Many firms and individual Canadians, institutions, organizations contributed, as did I as a private citizen. I think those results of that will be important. The $77 million committed so far by the federal government, in my mind, is
over 5 years.
Over 5 years.
It's not a lot of
It's
money.
not very much.
No.
The UK equivalent is $3 billion Canadian over roughly the same period of time. In Australia, it's about $1 billion. And so the Australian government itself has placed cybersecurity embedded within the financial empowerment piece around the future prosperity of Australia. So the economic plan is linked to cybersecurity, and for good measures.
There may be a feeling, though, among the population that this is something that we just really can't do that much about, because every time guys like you catch up to whatever the latest scam is out there, you know, they figure out something else. Is it impossible to keep up with the Joneses on this one?
Well, it'll never be one simple, elegant solution that we're going to be able to acquire, buy something, and stick it on. It's going to be, as I said earlier, a number of layered efforts at building resilience. The importance of it, though, is so obvious. This province is the economic engine of the country. The city of Toronto, embedded within that, represents perhaps 20% of the country's GDP on a daily basis. There are 150,000 tech workers, give or take, within the GTHA, the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, and if you include the Waterloo-Kitchener corridor, that number even grows further. So we're looking, what, 15, 20,000 companies at the cutting edge of technology. And this is about the future of our society, of our economy, prosperity, and in fact, I think democracy is at risk. Jurisdictions where things go off the rails, or people feel that the economy is not providing, end up seeing the voices of extremism reach out and touch people and resonate.
But you know what they say about terrorism, which is that, you know, we have to be right 100% of the time, and they only have to be right once. I mean, given the imbalance, given the asymmetry in those odds, how do you possibly hope for any success in keeping up with that?
Well, again, you do it as a team effort, and you do it with full awareness. There are many challenges out there. There's challenges around the global economy, foreign investments coming into Canada, issues of corruptive practices. There's so many challenges around the idea of sustaining a free, open, democratic society that observes the rule of law, but also maintains an important imperative, which is securing its society. To do that means that every individual has a role to play. It is the citizen, it is the law enforcement agency, it is the national security agencies, it is the different ministries who provide, whether it's community services or whether it's community safety. Everybody has a role to play in adapting to the circumstances. Threat actors are deeply empowered. We are in the age of asymmetrical threats.
In which case, let's finish up on this. Is it your advice, as the new provincial security advisor, to the people watching this program right now, that they should not bank online, should not do retail online, should not even send sensitive emails on their home accounts? Is that your advice?
Absolutely not. The issue is that we cannot stop doing what we do. The same way that I've encouraged people to never be fearful of terrorism. Do not change your habits. Do the things that you want to do. Travel, engage, go to public places, but do so with some sense of awareness. So being aware that, yes, if I do my banking online, then I should follow the fundamentals. Clear your cache, close down your browser, be careful where you keep your passwords. People change passwords a lot, but they don't have particularly good passwords. So have complex alphanumeric passwords. There's a number of things we can do, and I think that's really what's important. Don't stop. Do not stop looking for foreign investment, but be aware that other countries and state-owned enterprises represent a unique threat to the economic activity that you want to pursue.
Gotcha. That's Ray Boisvert. He's the Provincial Security Advisor, the first ever for the Government of Ontario. And we thank you for coming into TVO tonight and sharing your views.
My pleasure.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.